What's up everyone? Alex here. The idea of machines behaving like humans may be a hot topic in today's day and age, but I personally liken this desire to that of Pinocchio's, the little puppet who wanted to be a real boy. In a similar fashion, CRYMACHINA's Eves all want to become human, but in order to achieve that, they must hack and slash their way through countless hordes of mechanized monstrosities whose masters vie for control of a dying space station that serves as the last hope for humanity's re-emergence. CRYMACHINA is an action RPG from the folks who brought you 2019's CryStar, developed by Aquaria and published in the West by NIS America, who provided this PS5 review code. I normally start my reviews by talking about the gameplay, but given how CRYMACHINA's trailers and underlying themes resemble another popular game with mechanized women, I thought I'd start my review by setting some expectations here. And as always, you can expect no story spoilers here. While I would affectionately describe Nier Automata's story as one that features multiple start points and strong philosophical undertones, CRYMACHINA's narrative is comparatively more science fiction and straightforward. In fact, when compared to Nier Automata, CRYMACHINA's premise of its Eves actually being powered by the memories of long-dead humans poses opportunities to dive deep into their past in order to provide more flavor and color to the current goings-on. Much like Nier Automata, CRYMACHINA's world is devoid of humanity, though the Eves can earn a fraction of that as they level up and earn more XP, which is actually addressed as part of the story. With regards to the gameplay loop, you'll typically start off in the Imitation Garden, where you'll be required to watch story skits in the form of tea parties, given the freedom to upgrade your skills and abilities, and after all is said and done, select an area to explore. At times, you'll have multiple playable characters to choose from, but there will be times that the story will force you to play a specific character. Each area you explore is basically a small dungeon, complete with traps, loot, and insanely higher level challenges that you'll need to return to later. Returning from the dungeons, you get tons of new weapons and gear that you can equip your Eves, experience points that you can spend to level them up, as well as ego that can be used to upgrade Enoa's support abilities or each individual Eve's stats. You'll also have Enoa decipher the personality data you've earned to unlock even more ego and loot back at the Imitation Garden, and then the gameplay loop starts over. If you're used to other higher budget action JRPGs like the Tales of series or the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you might be disappointed with CRYMACHINA's design choice. CRYMACHINA's environments depict an all too familiar take on futurism that we've seen iterated upon in tons of media. Metallic, soulless, and angular surfaces with tons of tubes ferrying data from one area to another. That said, anyone coming from CryStar will see this as a huge step up, as the aforementioned game's environments weren't as ornate and interesting to look at as CRYMACHINA's. I personally fall in the middle camp, someone who understands the intent of the game's environmental design, with its developers putting more emphasis on the actual gameplay itself. Where the presentation falters a bit are the moments back at the Imitation Garden where CRYMACHINA doles out its story. Every time you return from a dungeon, you'll be greeted by a debriefing scene that you'll be intimately familiar with as you progress further into the game. After said scene, you're forced to watch tea party cutscenes that will feel very familiar to fans of visual novels. A band of characters just bantering about anything from the group's overall mission to the Eve's past memories. All of these are presented in a single static camera angle with no dynamic action, making these dialogue sequences just plain uninteresting to watch. In fact, even during cutscenes being played in the middle and at the end of dungeons, it's extremely rare to see fully animated action sequences, if at all. Nonetheless, the sweeping shots of the dungeon you're about to explore at the start does set the mood pretty well, despite the earlier mention of its architectural design. With regards to the game's Japanese voice acting, I do find that the slow pace of its dialogue to run counter to the fast-paced nature of its battles, often slowing the mood of the game down drastically whenever you're out of combat. and you do spend a ton of time out of combat. There's also moments when the voice acting keeps going or ends just before the text crawl finishes. This is a very minor complaint that no one else but me will mention, but I personally like it when the localization text crawl matches the voice dialogue one-to-one. Unlike CryStar, CRYMACHINA does not feature an English voice dub. One aspect of CRYMACHINA's presentation that does a really good job of selling the game's unique aesthetic is its incredible electronic soundtrack. The songs featured are a wide spread of electronic styles, all featuring singing vocals, which brings in a sliver of humanity to places that have none. The game knows full well that it has some banger tracks, that it's even got a built-in music player that lets you play any songs you've already listened to at the Imitation Garden. But where CRYMACHINA truly excels is its combat, and it's a fast-paced affair, especially when compared to 2019's CryStar. Generally speaking, it feels like a cross between a traditional 3D hack and slasher with mecha combat. This is largely due in part thanks to the Eve's ability to close distances quickly to deliver fast melee hits. The game also features a stun mechanic where you'll be building up your opponent's weak meter by overwhelming them with offensive maneuvers. When your opponent gets the weak status, you'll be able to launch them in the air, where you can follow up with even more attacks, which will then eventually trigger a down state once the enemy hits the ground. This down state will allow you to unleash a highly damaging finishing assault, though you can always whittle away at their health a bit more before triggering this powerful attack. I've mentioned earning ego earlier in this video, and one way you'll be spending this currency is to boost your Eve's equipment levels, allowing them to equip more weapons and auxiliaries. You can think of auxiliaries as pieces of armor with slots that you can fill in with various offensive and defensive capabilities, which are called sentiments. What's crazy about these auxiliaries is that they can sometimes branch, meaning not every sentiment becomes available depending on the situation. The auxiliaries themselves state how you can access these other branches, so considering these activations is key to creating a build suitable to your playstyle. Each sentiment costs a specific amount of energy, which sits at the bottom of the health bar. If this gauge is exhausted, you won't be able to invoke sentiments for a specific period of time, which can really hamper your offensive capabilities. Fortunately, you'll have access to Enoa's support abilities, which can either heal you, summon a support attacker, or awaken your latent powers, making you more powerful and resilient. You can try to mash your way through CRYMACHINA's battles, but I found that unless you're over-leveled and upgraded your weapons and auxiliaries to the best available, that it takes a bit of consideration to engage in CRYMACHINA's combat, which I greatly appreciate. Dodging willy-nilly will leave you open to powerful blows after executing said maneuver, while wailing on your opponents ensures that you miss important tells that clue you in on when to retaliate. If for some reason you still need further help, there is an option to turn on casual mode, though I didn't really play with this feature. I should also note that while the enemy design isn't all that varied, the dungeon encounter designs do have a few surprises here and there. One dungeon had me do a ton of light platforming to get to where I needed to be, while another had me running away from a giant whale that reminds me a lot of Crash Bandicoot's chase levels. And while these dungeons aren't quite the same level of polish as higher budget titles, I appreciate that CRYMACHINA tried to inject some variety into its gameplay without overstretching itself. It's just the right kind of variety that still puts its combat front and center. There are other dungeons that can be unlocked by reading some entries in the archives, which are mostly filled with enemies that'll test your combat skills, with the resulting victory earning you more XP. And to that end, you may find yourself replaying older levels to boost your Eve stats. Thankfully, the dungeons aren't all too long, and can often be finished in less than 8 minutes. While its environmental architecture and story cutscenes aren't all too interesting to look at, CRYMACHINA definitely excels at delivering a fast-paced combat experience that is only enhanced by its fantastic soundtrack. Its sci-fi story might feel familiar for fans of this type of storytelling. but I found that it separates itself well enough from those tales that it made me want to play more to find out how it all ends. CRYMACHINA will be a joy to play for anyone who's played Crystar and wanted more, while satisfying fans of action JRPGs looking to involve themselves in an interesting sci-fi twist.